Namaskar and welcome everyone.
Yeah.
Towards mainstream crafts and structural design. Today's Gubbi talk we are hosting is hosted by Gubbi Alliance for Sustainable Habitat. Gubbi is a self-funded association of habitat professionals and researchers that seek to mainstream sustainability as a core concern in design, policy, and habitat management. Among its members, spread across the country, are pioneers and leading Indian practitioners of genuinely sustainable approaches in architecture, construction, and participatory rehabilitation. As one of our continuing engagements with the larger community across various fields, Gubbi Talks is a series of interactive and thought-provoking conversations that explores the experiences and learnings of concerned habitat professionals. The series aims to reach out to a larger audience of students, academicians, and professionals, including policy influencers, through candid sharing and insightful conversations. We will bring you some of the best professionals and practitioners in the field who share a common vision for a better, more equitable habitat for a creative and integrated development approach to design of the built environment and related issues. We would like to thank EDS Global and the team, Prachi and Deepa. This session is also organized by EDS under US aid-led Maitri program. Recordings of all Gubbi talks will be uploaded subsequently on our YouTube channels. Now I would like to also introduce our colleague at Gubbi and a friend, philosopher and guide, architect Sanjay Prakash, who has graciously offered to moderate this session today. We also would like to welcome Laurent Fournier from Kolkata, who is sharing his work today with us. Our moderator of this series today, Sanjay Prakash, who is fondly called SP by most of us, needs no introduction himself. He is the principal at Shift, New Delhi, and is an eminent architect who is one of the pioneers who has redefined the ideas of sustainability in Indian context through his work, researches, projects, and advocacy for a more equitable, sustainable habitat. His work, research, interactions, and collaborations have inspired a generation of architects all over, and his special interest in the science and maths of sustainability, including the aesthetics of sustainability, has earned him many fans all around. He continues to mentor many of us professionals in this field through his regular interactions at all levels. Over to Sanjay Prakash, who would introduce our today's speaker. SP sir.
Hi. So my name is Sanjay, as Dharmesh no doubt told you, and I am extremely honored to welcome Laurent Fournier from Kolkata, who I have known for some time. And I mean this as a compliment when I say that because I got to know of him through dry toilets, I thought for many months that he was an engineer. And I mean that as a compliment. That's when he told me that no, he's an architect, which surprised me because Laura can at the same time delve in this world of very deep craft and hand skills, and at the same time aspects uh, of design and construction, which normally elude a lot of us architects. So Laura is settled in Kolkata, and he's speaking from there. And I must say that we have this curious situation of having the advantage of being able to listen to people from all over the world and all over the country in these times of pandemic, uh, even though we are in different places. It actually makes it simpler in some senses to do this kind of exercise. I was well, we have now about 75 people who've joined in. So I guess that is time enough for us to begin. And I'd like to hand it over to you, Laurent. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Sanjay, and thank you to have invited me in this talk. Yes. So I would like to explain my journey and my relationship to architecture, and yes, so I am sharing my presentation. I go full screen, and yes, this is my first slide. I wanted to start with this this painting by Albert Dürer, and because what is striking in this painting is that you have human figures in the landscape, and there are 4 which are very, very clearly visible, and looking harder we can find a few more. So it is very striking when you see a landscape painter which shows a landscape permeated with humanity. You see houses, and you see every line of the rocks and mountains looks like it has been done by a human. And now this is a drawing by my father, who was a painter. It is a drawing of his birthplace in the Alps, and you can hardly notice a village at the bottom left. A village which seems done by the same stuff as the mountains, the trees, and everything around. So now I would like to read a quote by architect Adolf Loos, which is one of my inspirators. It is a book that Adolf Loos has written in 1910. The name of the book is Spoken in the Wilderness. So I am quoting now. Let's have a walk on the shore of a lake in the Alps. The sky is blue, the water green, everything is permeated with peace. Mountains and clouds reflect in the water, as do the houses, the farms, and the chapels, which seem to not have been made by humans, but by the same divine workshop that did the mountain and the trees, the clouds, and the blue sky. But what is this? The wrong knot disturbs this harmony. Amidst the farmers' houses, a villa throws a displeasing and pointless cry. It is a work of an architect. A good or bad architect? I don't know. I only know there is no peace, no rest, no beauty anymore. How can the work of an architect, good or bad, sully the lake? The peasant doesn't sully it, nor does the engineer who builds a railway line on the shore, or whose boat draws waves in the clear wind mirror. This is because they work differently from the architect. The farmer digs a trench and calls a mason. If clay is available in the surrounding, then a brick kiln is also there to supply bricks. Otherwise, stones on the shore are used. And as the mason assembles the brick or the stones, the carpenter has already set his work site. The axe sings. He makes the roof. A beautiful or ugly roof? He doesn't know. The roof. He wanted to build a house for him, his family, and his animals, and he succeeded. His neighbor and his grandfather succeeded all the same. He built without effort, like the animal, guided by his instinct. And his house is as beautiful as a rose, a horse, or a cow. The architect, on the other hand, good or bad, sullies the lake. This is because the architect, like most urban dwellers, has no culture. The peasant has a culture and is not confused. The urban dweller is uprooted. I call culture this balance of the internal man and external man, which is a condition of all thought and all reasonable activity. So this quote by Adolf Loos, for me, when I discovered it a little late in my studies, it was very striking because he was expressing really my relationship with architecture. As architect, I was feeling like I am in exile. I am not in the proper place, I'm not doing the right thing, and I don't know how to do the right thing and how to come back to the right place. And this drawing, which I'm showing here, is also by my father. It's a cartoon. So he shows a very cartoonish kind of villa in the middle of a landscape. And the landscape has also some farmer houses, which are totally merged with the landscape. So there is one aspect of the quote of Adolf Loos with which I don't agree. It is when he says that the farmer builds without effort. I think this is also romanticism, which is quite common. The idea that people of the past built with their instinct only. I want to illustrate this point with an example of some mother drawing which I did recently in Uttarakhand. When I saw these houses, I had the impression that I had reached heaven. The harmony was so total. This is the house one, built in 1972. This is the interior. This is a mother drawing of the main floor. And people are so nice, you know, they just let me enter. They let me take all the measurements. They let me sit on a nice place where I could sit and make my drawing inside their house. They even offered me tea. So I was like honored guest, you know, just allowed to do the working drawing of their house, which is absolutely wonderful when you meet such people. This is a section, elevation, some details. And here's a second house, which is a bit older. You can see the scale of the house is very, very typical. Here on the right side, I am sitting, not on a chair, but I am sitting on the floor itself. So you see the size. This window looks like a French door, but actually the height is extremely low. This is a mother drawing of the main floor, of the ground floor, where the cattle stays. This is a section, some details. And this is a contour which you can get contour easily from Google. You can trace the contour on Google Maps by using the levels. Okay, now what I want to show it is an exercise which I learned from my professor Jacques Frey in the School of Architecture. It is an exercise by which, after you have done a mother drawing, or if you have a drawing of an existing building, you try to recompose a sequence of decisions that have led to the design as it is, with the basic assumption that every decision has some reason. This is only assumption that you have to do. Generally, in vernacular architecture, the measurements are in round number. It will be generally in feet, or maybe to the nearest 6 inches. So these are the basic dimensions of one room. This is my supposition. I think they started with one room in one corner, and I get round numbers everywhere. So basically 4 decisions: the length, the width of the house, the width of the door, and the thickness of the wall. These are 4 decisions necessary to make this room as it is. Then, again, this is my assumption, but you see, I think the house has been extended on the left. So on red, it is a first room, and in black and white, it is an extension. And then this is a series of decisions that have been taken to extend this house on the left. So there are 9 decisions, and some of them are not really decisions, like the width of the pier, it is a standard width, and all the widths of doors and windows are also standard. They are the same in this region of Uttarakhand. So what you find is that you have a very small list of decisions which leads to a plan And it is very rare that you find this in architecture done by architects. In vernacular architecture, generally, the decisions are highly rational and highly constrained because these people do not have excess money, and there is not much scope for fantasy. And it is really very striking for me that you get some extraordinarily beautiful results in such difficult condition, where money is highly is in short supply, money and time and resources, and that they get some these results. So you see, the one definition of vernacular architecture is that it's an architecture done without drawing. So how can you make architecture without drawing? The answer is in the type, what we call the type of building, which is a mental idea of the building, which is common within a community. Here, this is a quote by Hasan Fatih in his book, Gurna, A Tale of Two Villages. He explained how the head architect in the Ministry of Work, so basically the equivalent of what we would call a conservation spending a lot. He was struggling to design the detail of a capital with intricate stone pendants. And he was working several days making these drawings. And one day he saw an artisan coming, and the artisan was asking him, what is this complicated drawing you are doing? And he explained, and he told, it's very simple. I will make a 3D model in plaster, and I will give you tomorrow. And the next day, the artisan brought the capital, done absolutely perfectly. Then the architect has drawn, he has made the drawing based on the model done by the artisan. And then he could officially hand over the drawing to the artisan so that he could execute the model. So this is very interesting because it shows that architectural drawing is always based on a set of skills, available skills. Basically, a drawing is a description of a work to do, and we need, as our basic assumption, some existing techniques and method of representation and typical object which exist. So it means the notion of type is still very much existing. This is a drawing by my teacher, Jacques Frédet, professor of architecture. It is a mother drawing. He spent his entire life making mother drawings of ordinary buildings. He was not very interested in the palaces and temples and churches, but he was interested in ordinary buildings. And I think he has made several hundreds of mother drawings of houses of Paris, but also in many other countries in the world. So you see this drawing, every stone is shown, and it is on scale. And these drawings are made on site. He had incredible drawing skills. This is another drawing which he made on AutoCAD. I was, like all his students, I was very disappointed that he started to work on computer, but I think he took it as a kind of exercise to prove that it was also possible to use computer to do this kind of drawing. And then this kind of drawing raised many questions. You know, I met some senior conservation architects in India. They told me, we don't need mother drawing. There are too many mother drawing already. What will we do with all these mother drawing? And it sounded very strange to me. It was like someone who would tell me, oh, we don't need to do yoga anymore. We are doing yoga since hundreds of years. Why do you need to still make yoga after so much of yoga? You know, it's the same reasoning. So to do a mother drawing is not to keep it in a store somewhere. It is, we do it for the sake of doing it. It is a learning exercise. This is why Jacques Frédet did this drawing. For him, it was to keep the memory of these buildings, because these buildings, as he was saying, were being destroyed at the rhythm of arbitrary executions. It means he was seeing all these buildings being destroyed one after another. Ok, tu me mets. Oh, je mets depuis l'ordinateur? Non. Mets-le, s'il te plaît. Oui, tu mets depuis l'ordinateur. Ok. Ok, je mets comme ça. Voilà. Sorry, I have to put my lamp on charge. Okay. Now, there is one question. Some people ask, why do you make drawings of buildings which have been built without drawings? What is the rationality of such an exercise? So the reason why my teacher did this drawing was to, I would say, to honor these buildings which were disappearing and which were being killed. Since they were not being conserved, at least it was possible to make a drawing. It was his primary motivation. But then there are two other reasons. He says, he described what is a type, the building type. It is a mentally visualized whole which acts as a common ground between the owner, the artisan, when they make a building. And now, why making today drawings of buildings which have been made without drawing? So his answer is that these buildings have actually not been made without drawing, because there was an ancient art of stone cutting and carpentry joining, which is what we call now shop drawings. And this does not mean that the drawing necessarily comes first and the construction after. The opposite is historically possible, even more likely. It is because arches, vaults, and trusses are commonly made that drawing methods are developed to improve these techniques. So it happened quite often that the drawings, the art of making drawing happens after the art of building has started. I want to show some example of my mother drawing. This was a house of my parents in the Alps, in the French Alps. This house was built in 1737 and it was covered with thatch. This is a plan. It fits approximately in a square of 20 meters by 20 meters. The walls are made of stone with mud mortar, and you have a massive wooden framework made of chestnut trees. This is a house in Bardhaman in West Bengal, a mud house. This is a plan, section, the long section, and this is a photo of the house. This is another house in West Bengal in Birbhum near Rampurhat. It has a very interesting veranda with a huge opening. You can see on the plan on the bottom right, there is a beam and there is a wooden framework in the middle of the veranda. So it creates a huge opening right in the middle of the house with a big amount of light entering. And now I would like to start talking how structural design has helped me do as an architect what I wanted to do. This is a building I built in 2003 for very, very close friends who wanted to make a house in a school in his village. And very generously, he told me, Laurent, you do whatever you like. I will not ask any question. You just do your building. So I decided to do a building which would not have concrete and also not have steel. I did not succeed in eradicating steel. It has 200 kilo of steel, but it has no concrete. So this is a plan. It was inspired by arches crossing each other at 45 degrees, which is a design which you find in many churches of Armenia. These are some detailed drawing which I did to study the brickwork and the exact dimension. Another detailed drawing. And this is how I found the profile of the arches. I needed arches which would be in catenary so that they would be stable under their own weight. So I just, on the left, you can see there was a wall on the site itself. I just hung a rope and I traced at the scale of 1:1 the arch. Even I traced every brick, and in a reversed form on the top left of the photo, on the top right of the photo on the left, you can see the in section view, the masonry pier and the truss line continuing in the masonry pier. And it was showing that the truss line is falling right in the middle of the pier, so it was perfectly stable. And then on the right, you can see how I made a kind of brick formwork in which I bent bamboo. So this was something I will not repeat today. I would do it with steel because bamboo is very strong, but the joints are very slippery. So steel would have been much better because one is welded, it doesn't move, and then you can sell the steel you can reuse it. So anyway, we built. This is how we build the arches. And yes, here you can see the bamboo shuttering. So 2 arches are already built, and we are making the third one. And the 2 arches on the top, you can see they are attached together by a piece of wood. This was absolutely necessary, you see, even on the left, to stabilize the arches, because they were really like standing on their own without any lateral balance. So this temporary wooden frame was absolutely necessary. And yes, here you can see how slender they are. So now I would like to share a personal experience with you. You see, when I was building these arches, I had checked several times their stability by calculations. And one morning, very early in the morning, I woke up and I had a nightmare. I had a dream that the entire village was running after me because the building had collapsed and had killed 20 children. And I was running in the countryside, and then I woke up. And then I sat again on my desk and I made again the calculation by a third way. And again, I found that there was no way it could collapse. So just on the bottom right, I have written basically the calculation. It's extremely simple. You calculate an arch by the standard formula. It's basically a beam, and you consider that the rise of the arch is like a lever arm. So you find the tension, you find the force in the arch, you find the stress. The stress was very, very low. It could take a massive load, and because the arch are crossing into each other, the buckling length was also very low. So there was absolutely no problem, and I went ahead. This is another aspect which I had to study because see, these arches, there is 1.5 meter span in between, and I did not want concrete. And in Uttar Pradesh, this is built in Agra district of Uttar Pradesh. The traditional floor system is made of sandstone, and the span is about 1 meter. Now, how could I reach 1.5 meter? I could not have so many arches. It would have looked very ugly, and it would have been expensive. So I found this system of cantilever. Initially, actually, I studied. I found that it was possible to use a cantilever system, and then I found that the balconies in the village, and actually in all over Uttar Pradesh, are made in this manner. You see, you have a stone which is called the dimension is A in the sketch, which is the span is equal to the distance between two girders. And these stones are supported by smaller stones. Now, if you assume that the thickness of this stone is the same, then the ideal ratio between the small stone and the big stone is just 1/4. It is a perfect ratio so that the stress will be the same in both stones. And then I took measurements of the stone in the balcony, and I found that they are all 1/4 of you see the small stone resting on the girder, the width of this stone is exactly 1/4 of the span between two girders. So it is very interesting because I don't know if someone did the calculation or if they found out that this was the best ratio or if they did some sort of calculation which is different from the calculation we do today, I don't know. Now I come to the system, why I wanted to study this Corbel system and how I could increase the span. Actually, I placed a series of Corbeling. You can see on the photo on the bottom left, there are 3 Corbeling successive. Like that, I could increase even further. So these are the calculations. And this is the construction. And so here on the left, we are placing the Corbeling stone, and on the right, we are placing the large stone. And this was here, you see, the villagers were a little anxious. Sometimes they ask me, so Laurent, when shall I call the Dalai mystery? Dalai, why Dalai? There is no concrete. Oh, are you sure? Yes, yes. But finally, it is only when we had placed this stone, finally, that they truly believed me that there would be no concrete. So all my friend is there, and his father, and the friend of his father, and everyone was there to celebrate that the roof was finally covered. This is the inside view of the building. Scaffolding are still there, and this is the exterior view. And this is some calculation I did to compare what is the actual safety of this floor compared with other buildings. So there are 2 ways to compare. One is to compare with the conventional floor system used in this region, and which is a valid way of comparison, because the conventional floor system is it has a safety that the people expect, and the notion of safety is totally related to what you expect. So it's very important to have a socially accepted standard. So I found that it is about 64% stronger. And if you compare with Indian standard, I found that it can take 432 decanewton per square meter, which is absolutely good. Indian standard prescribed 400. Now, this is another project I did for, I was working for architect Dulal Mukherjee in Kolkata, and he gave me a very nice opportunity to do a lot of experiments. J'ai beaucoup de %. Pourquoi? Ça marche? Okay, they done the charger. So first, you see, I wanted to do a staircase without concrete, based on a almost flat arch, an arch with a very light camber. No. Okay, amen. Attends, éteins ça. Tu laisses, éteins. Voilà. These were the calculation I did. So Dulal Mukherjee had 2 in-house engineers, and they were very afraid to do a staircase without concrete. So I did this calculation. I've shown to them, and they were having none of it. They told me, no, sorry, Laurent. Okay, this is a completed staircase. Okay, I'm doing first. Now I want to show you practically how. Screen. Do you? Oh, now I have to share my screen. Show screen. Can you see my screen?
Yes. Yeah, can see your screen again.
Okay. So this is a building I did for Dr. Debalde Midorisa. He wanted a building without concrete, without wood, without steel. And the only thing that was left was mud. So he gave me the opportunity to make my first dome made of Adobe. This is a plan of the building, and in red, it was a dome of which we made dome on every room, but okay, so this is how the vault were being done. And you see, this is the inner corner here in the middle, inside corner of the room, and it was a bit difficult, but we managed to build without shuttering. Here you see the corner growing, coming inside, and this is a completed room. and you can see it is called a groin, and it means it is has a negative curvature. Here you can see the negative curvature. It has a shape of a saddle. So it is possible to build even this without shuttling using Adobe. And Adobe is an excellent technique to learn how to make this. You get a lot of understanding of the structural behavior of domes and vaults. I want to show briefly some buildings I did using bamboo. This is a building I showed Alban. This is a model that one very young intern, she was in second year of architecture, and she did this model. And this model was extremely useful because it was at the site all the time. And this model is showing each bamboo. Absolutely each bamboo is there. So looking at the model, the mystery could elaborate a process of construction. And these are the working drawings. And these are joining details. Everything is joined by lashing, bamboo to bamboo, and bamboo to concrete. It is using the Colombian method of joining, elaborated by Oscar Hidalgo and Simon Velez. So you grout a roll inside the bamboo. Some joining detail. You know, you see, in very often in bamboo joining, especially, I mean, whenever you use joining by lashing, you have to, the bamboo, there must be an eccentricity because the bamboo must extend beyond the point of joining. So I am showing on the left this eccentricity, and so you need to keep this in mind when you make your purlins, your rafters, and if you are systematic, it works very well. So these are some construction photos. This is another similar building. Is a house, and there's a calculation for the bamboo. I just took the data from the National Building Code, and then I made curves. Show screen. Okay. So this is a toilet which has been designed by Dr. Desbalden, the same person who gave me this wonderful opportunity to build this Adobe dome in his farm. It's a toilet which works on the principle of segregation, complete segregation of the excreta, of the urine, and of the wash water. And these are where these three things are going. Excreta on the left, which is left for drying and composting. In the center, the urine goes into a plastic tank, which is then used for as a fertilizer, and the gray water goes in a root zone treatment. The view of the house. Some view of the, this is a staircase which was done by a dome mystery, essentially using the dome technique, but in a slightly different way. This technique of dome is a very ancient technique, but recently in the last 30 years, mysteries from Uttar Pradesh have developed a way of making domes without shuttling using normal cement mortar, which is a totally new innovation. Generally, it was done with plaster of Paris, it was done with mud, it was done using tiles, but it was never done using bricks and cement. Now we can use normal bricks and normal cement. These techniques becomes really low cost and available to everyone. Actually, it is cheaper than a concrete slab. This is a spiral staircase made of bamboo, the same house. This is a roofing detail, and with thatch, very high quality thatching done by Mata Chat, which is a thatching company from Bhuj in Gujarat, fixing of solar panel. And this is what happened after the cyclone Amphan in Bengal. We had no damage at all except a little bit of plaster erosion, mud plaster erosion you can see on the upper right of the screen. What is very interesting, Le Corbusier had these 5 tenets of modern architecture. And during my studies, I hated Le Corbusier. So these 5 tenets were building on stilts, roof terrace, free plan, horizontal windows, and free elevation, curtain wall. And as a student, I was wondering, but how Le Corbusier became mad, you know, to write this. And then just 2 years ago, I looked, after I completed this house in Baripur, what I found, I have actually followed these 5 tenets. See, my house is on stilts. It has a roof terrace. It has a free plan. The partition and the column are totally independent. and I had to be, all these columns are slanted, so of course this cannot be slanted. Horizontal, all are horizontal. All my walls are curtain walls. They are hanging from outside. They do not rest on the floor. They actually physically hang from outside. Curtain walls. Le Corbusier. So it was funny to me to see that eventually one day I have been following the 5 tenets of modern architecture, which I really hated during my studies. Okay, this is okay. This we can go quickly. This I wanted to mention. This is a very interesting book, Stewart Brand. I think he's Italian, but he is kind of professor of something, of many things in MIT. And wrote a fantastic book on basically, you can say, on vernacular architecture in the US, called How Buildings Learn. You can see on the left, building as designed by the architect, and on the right, what this building have become. See, as designed by the architect, two identical buildings, and on the right, they have become very different. And what is interesting is that both buildings have gained in personality. They are more interesting, and yet they are different. And you can even say that the owner have built on the basis given by the architect. The owner did not demolish anything that the architect has done, they have built on it. So this book is full of such very interesting examples. So I think I have completed my presentation. Can you?
Hello.
Can you? Yes.
Have you ended your presentation, Laura?
Yes, I have finished.
Can you? Okay. So thank you very much, and we had hoped to get a very different view, and a kind of outsider's view from the inside, as it were, which I think we've all got. There are still, just a minute. Yeah, Laura?
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry.
So that was that was you calling.
Sorry. Yes.
You couldn't hear.
My mistake.
So I'm sorry for the technical glitches today, but I think we had a very interesting insight. But we still had a very interesting insight into your way of thinking and your architectural development, like an outsider's view from the inside, as it were, because you're not Indian and yet you are a naturalized Indian now, and you've been working with local specialists, local craftsmen, and so on. Now, I wanted to ask you if you believe that all this city making, this much construction that the real estate, private real estate is doing nowadays in every city, including Kolkata, including Delhi, Gurgaon, and Chennai, and Hyderabad, and Bangalore, would it be possible without reinforced concrete?
No, not at all. Not at all. You see, I have made I started my career as almost as a fight against concrete. We started with this. Even at the point of time, I wanted to leave architecture because I was so disappointed with mainstream architecture. And then I realized recently I made only one building without concrete. Every building I did, except one, would not have been possible without concrete. And actually, I have developed a deep love for concrete when I started calculating it. And also I found that the engineering method developed in the structural calculation of concrete, like the yield light design, the strut and tie methods, plastic design, the idea that you can have a brittle material, but you can design in such a way that it becomes plastic. All these methods now are used for masonry, They are used for masonry. They are used for bamboo, for materials which are not concrete. In a sense, Le Corbusier was right. It is a material of 20th century, but we should resist being too much fascinated by it. You see, it's the most magical material, but yet we should not let ourselves be fascinated by concrete to the point of using it without rationality and without control.
Okay, great. So, well, you know, my own work is very similar to yours in the sense that while I've done many concrete buildings myself, I hope that I can say that I have not been blindly affected by simply using concrete for concrete's sake. And yet, our appreciation for concrete, as you rightly say, is probably deeper than a person who regularly uses concrete, because we tend not to use it, so we really appreciate what it is valuable for.
Yes, yes, yes.
So great.
Yes.
But if what do you say to people who build in vernacular areas, including in Uttarakhand, and they tend to use fired brick walls with cement mortar and concrete slabs? Is that sensible, or are there better ways of building?
So you see, one of these two houses, I did a mother drawing, the second one, the most beautiful one of the two.
Yeah.
The owner, right now, I think maybe he has already demolished it. He was planning to demolish his house. Then I asked him why. And just next to the house, there was the house of his brother. He had already demolished his own house and built a modern house. The modern house had a 10-feet high room. It was very cold in winter. And quite hot in summer, so it was quite uncomfortable. It was quite expensive. It will not last very long because concrete, especially the way it is built, generally it is too much exposed to the weather. So all these charger and beams, and generally they don't put enough cement in the concrete, so it hardly lasts more than 30 years. So I gave him all these arguments, and he told me, I know all this, but I need a proper house. You know, I cannot receive guests. I cannot put a sofa because in my old house people have to sit on the floor. You cannot have modern furniture in this kind of house. And I am losing face. My brother has a proper house. This is not a proper house. I have to change my house. And the answer to this is very tough. We have to do our best to prove that you can have a gorgeous and a fantastic house using these techniques, and we have to use both rationality and art. But it's a very tough challenge.
Okay.
So what I say, see, I am struggling to explain to people. It's not easy.
I know exactly how you feel, and I go through the same kind of struggle myself. Okay, now I'm going to give the mic back to Dharmesh, who probably has a few questions from the audience by now. Is that right, Dharmesh? You have? Dharmesh, can you come in?
Looks like he's lost his audio for a bit because I can't see the audio icon here.
Dharmesh, I think I'll call him.
Yes, he's back. He's here.
Okay. Dharmesh?
Yeah, sorry, I had a small network thing. Yes, yeah. Can you just? I have some questions.
Saying that
once you are,
yeah. Go ahead. So we have about half an hour for questions, and then we wind up. Go ahead. Back to you, Dharmesh. Dharmesh?
Anji, yes. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Anji, yes.
Go ahead.
Well, there are a few questions, Laurent. I'm just
Yes.
So one of the question is, how were the number and sizes of bamboo load-taking structures decided? Is there a book that can be referred to? Are the bamboos on the side of the staircase supporting the beam structurally? This was regarding
Yes.
the Linus and Rupsta's house.
Yes. Okay, so I use the data from the National Building Code. They explain how to use it. There is just a small ambiguity. They use the term modulus of rupture, which actually means the bending strength of the whole round bamboo, which is very different from the strength in tension or in compression. And this is well explained in an article by Jules Janssen, where it is an article which is, I think, already 20 or 30 years old. He explained that because bamboo is an extremely heterogeneous material, there is a simple way to calculate the bending strength. You assume it is a tube, and you make testing, you get measurement, but what you observe is that actually the bamboo fails by splitting. The bamboo in 95% of the cases fails by splitting. So for the sake of simplicity of calculation, we calculate as if it was a section in bending, and as if there was a kind of imaginary modulus of rupture, so that we can calculate just like a, and this is what is called modulus of rupture in the National Building Code, which is much less, because it has to be much less than the tensile strength. And also the National Building Code has no data on joints. I mean, no calculation data. It has a lot of sketch application, but no calculation data, because the joints are still very much a subject of research. And there is not much data on joints in general in the literature. So this is very important, because in a typical bamboo structure, if you use, for example, joining by nuts and bolts, especially if you have a dissymmetrical connection, like for example, two bamboo joined side by side with one nail, this connection will fail at 10% of the strength of the bamboo. So you see, and this is the most common connection used everywhere in ordinary bamboo structure in villages. People just drive nails, they drill a hole, the bamboo will not, and then they just drive a nail through the bamboo. Now, if you make it symmetrical, you can increase, if I remember, to about 30%, but it's not great. So really, how to make proper bamboo joints is a very important issue. And that is why I use joining by lashing, which is a traditional method used in the pandal. In Durga Puja in Kolkata, this massive festival, you have bamboo pandal, which are sometimes 4-story high. And sometimes I have seen a span of 12 meters without support, just with bamboo truss. And everything is assembled by lashing. And in the last maybe 80 years of Durga Puja pandal in Kolkata, with I think there is maybe 3,000 pandals, there has never been a collapse which has been recorded. So this shows the stellar performance, safety performance of vernacular bamboo structures assembled by lashing. And yes, and for the staircase, I think the question was also, it is right, the bamboo on the side are supporting. Yes, absolutely. I mean, the staircase is supported both on the core. You have a kind of bamboo column made of a bundle of bamboo on the core, and also on the side. So it's not a cantilever.
Okay, I'm going to step in and ask you. I'm going to step in and ask you if you think that I mean, clearly this is pointing out that bamboo construction is today an art. And do you feel it can become a technology, and should it become a technology? Meaning that it can be engineered in a way that
Yes.
practically everybody can do it?
Yes, of course. Yes. Oh, yes, yes, yes. I mean, everyone should take it as they want. If a technologist want to make it a technology, please. I mean, many people are doing that. See, you have PhDs written on bamboo with dozens and hundreds of pages of calculation, and it's wonderful. So it's not one or the other. It's they will help. A technologist developing accurate design, accurate scientific design will help the artisans, and vice versa. So yes, it is happening. A lot is happening in bamboo design research and engineering, and it's wonderful.
Great.
There are a few more questions.
Ramesh?
Yes, yeah, there are a few more questions here. Can you explain how did you design the Adobe structural system? That's one. And along with it, I'll just read out another one, which is not really a question, rather than an observation. Most of the architects working in sustainable design tend to focus on technology, skill, and or how to. Are these not a contextual output? Sharing the challenges, socio-economic, political, environmental, and how he or she developed frameworks to understand these issues in habitat design, within which technology, materials, and skills are embedded. This enables peer-to-peer learning rather than instructional learning. So that's like a more like an observation. So there are two questions I'm combining.
Yes.
Have you always done calculations
two
in
very
advance? Or, yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, you can.
Can I answer the
again.
first question first? Okay.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
See, it's very simple. I just calculated the stress in the Adobe. The stress depends on the rise of the dome. So I found that, and I wanted dome as low as possible because I wanted to use them as a floor. So it has to be flattened on top. So I found that 2 feet rise was extremely safe. So basically for Adobe, basically for masonry, you have a safety coefficient of about 10. And for raw mud, whether it's Adobe or Cob, it should be 20. The safety coefficient between the working stress and the crushing stress. And so this was one calculation in the way what I actually shown to calculate what is the tension in the tire. I know how many steel rods in my steel type. These are steel rods embedded in concrete. You can say concrete reinforced type. And so these were the calculation I did. Now the second question is extremely interesting. You see, basically I am a kind of engineer, and even at the beginning of my career, I hesitated between being an architect or an engineer. This is okay. And which is not to say that everyone should go with that. And you have like example, very much work really on the skill of the people, skill of artisans, the tradition of the communities. Which is very, very different from so we need different approaches, and also this question. I mean this kind of observation is not totally correct. You see, the first time I earned money was and this gave me a lot of confidence in building. My long interaction with bamboo artisan and my observation of the pandal also gave me a lot of insights and confidence to use bamboo as a structural material. So it's not it's not like one or the other. You can you can put it a lot of effort in calculations to increase your confidence, which is not at all incompatible on the contrary, it reinforces, they strengthen each other. You can also get your confidence from learning from artisans. And I learned a lot from this bamboo artisan, from the carpenter, you know, in 1.5 months, he was alone with me. I was his intern, you can say. I was, and two of us, we just built a wooden house in 6 weeks without the finishing. The finishing, you know, took 3 months, because when you make a frame, it is very, very quick to make a frame. And then to make the proper water doors, windows, all the finishes takes a very long time. So basically the structural frame was done just by a 2-story house in 6 weeks by this carpenter and me. And this was a major experience for me. And I worked a lot also as an artisan. I did a lot of refurbishment just to make a living. You know, I was just redoing flats, but including manual work. You know, just doing the painting, the plastering. So it's not at all one.
Okay, I have
you have a question?
Yeah, there are a couple of more questions. Maybe you can just combine a couple of them. There's one like, can you, if we use fly ash bricks for making domes, is that safe compared to red bricks? That's one. And the second one is, do you agree modern architecture is just making places look like vernacular, look alike, and vernacular is a way to bring back the purity of architecture? Is vernacular the way to bring back the purity of architecture? There are two questions. One is the technical on.
Okay. So fly ash bricks are extremely strong. They are absolutely as good as clay bricks. But one advantage of the clay bricks is that they allow to build a dome or a vault without shuttering. And I am not aware that any technique has been developed to make a dome or vault without shuttering using fly ash. Maybe one day someone will find a solution, but now I think the only way is to use red bricks. Otherwise, fly ash is absolutely excellent. And then the second question is really interesting. See, for me, the most modern architect who has really reinvented architecture and put architecture back on its feet is Hasan Fatih. And Hasan Fatih, he was born in Egypt, a poor third world country, in a rich family, and he was educated in the classic Western tradition of architecture. And his career, he was forced to restart from scratch. He could not really use anything that he had learned in his formal training as a conventional Western architect. And it is explained in his book, Gourna, A Tale of Two Villages. And at the same time, he never rejects what he has learned. It is never like a rejection of what he learned in his training. He really wants to join both worlds. And what he's done in his career, I believe, is exactly what Jacques Derrida called deconstruction. It means he has entirely disassembled the profession of architecture as it was established. He built on proper basis. It's really different construction or revolution, you know, deconstruction. It's really like revisiting, and you redo everything again using all the elements which are available. It's very interesting because there are a number of architects which are fascinated by Jacques Derrida, Catalan, Tommy, and others. And Jacques Derrida told them very clearly, you know, what you are doing is, there's a deep misunderstanding. It has nothing to do with what I mean as deconstruction. And often the practitioner precedes the theoretician. And so Hasan Fatih already in 1940, 1950 was doing what Derrida has conceptualized later in philosophy. So basically, see, every architecture is vernacular. If you see this book by if you see this book by this guy from the Stewart brand. He explained very clearly how a good owner, a good patron, will always manage to have a good building, even if the architect is bad. But the opposite is not true. A good architect, and if the patron has no understanding, the building will be a failure. And this is just a simple fact. So the patron has to say the same. This is what Hasan Fatih all the time. So vernacular architecture is architecture, you see, and that's why that's why I wanted to give the name of this talk "Return to Mainstream," because when I look back at my career, it has been like an attempt to return from exile into mainstream. And there is a very nice quote by architect Bruce Goff. One journalist asked him, "What is your relation with the mainstream?" And he replied, "But I am right in the middle of the mainstream, or maybe on a long-term basis, 1 or 2 years maybe." So I think that the vernacular architecture is the mainstream. 2000 years, and for the next 2000 years.
So we probably lost Laura in terms of video, but it's okay. We can hear you clearly.
Okay.
So please go ahead. And well, you know, the two things that I take away from this talk and discussion are very interesting. One is that it's almost like the practice of architecture should become a search for good clients, good owners, good promoters of buildings. And the second is that we need to learn from traditional craftsmen just as much as we need to stick to our engineering knowledge and develop it using maybe this kind of vernacular tradition.
That reminds me of your famous quote, SP, which you have been sharing many times, that engineers need to be more artistic and architects need to be more technical.
Yes,
It's
completely.
Yes.
And
Exactly.
that's why I
Yes.
meant it when I said that it was a compliment when I thought that Laurent was an engineer to begin with.
Thank you.
Laura, I completely identify with you on that. Well, next question is, someone says, your designs and construction appear amazing. What makes people think that they are not proper houses? And how do you address those issues? And connected to that is another question, how people living in surrounding areas perceive the buildings designed and built by you, and how do they perceive the owner of these buildings?
Okay.
Hello, Laura. Yeah.
Yes, yes. Can you hear me? Okay. So, everyone doesn't like, for example, the most successful is the House of Freedom and Russia. I really love this building. I'm very proud of it. And once I wanted to show it to a potential client. Approaching the building after they asked me, what do you intend to do about aesthetics? For him, there was an aesthetic problem. And he asked, what was the cost? Was it 1,000 square foot? Then they replied, no, sir, it's 3,000 rupees per square foot. So this client, of course, was not didn't become my client. So see, people as they are, look to me, many others.
No worries.
Hi, Laurent. I'm sorry, I'm having some issues today, but yeah, just a couple of more questions.
No, anyway. Yes.
Yeah.
I cannot.
How do you convince the government to pick bamboo construction over modern day RCC construction? That's one. And yeah, that I guess even SP can answer. Maybe he's worked a lot with recently. SP has completed one nice building with bamboo and earth. Yeah.
I think let Laurent answer.
Okay, see, now right. Can you hear me? Hello? Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. I talk with the district administration of South 24 Parganas to use bamboo cycling shutters. So they are interested. This very to be in more detail. How can I do that?
Uh,
I think it's a
Can I,
technical issue of bandwidth.
yeah, maybe. Can I take a
So
next
maybe
question?
if I stop my webcam and then hear me.
Yeah,
Please
Can you
stop
hear
your
me
web.
now?
yeah. Can
Okay.
I? Yeah. So can I take the next question, maybe, or you would like to? Yeah. So the next question says, as per the current scenario, due to urbanization, people are migrating, or we can say attracted towards the urban centers, and almost 54% of people all over the world are already migrating into urban areas, or whatever. Rather, they mean that 54% are urban areas. The score will be approximately 60% in 2050. How can we balance the demand of the housing in those areas, as we have no options but to increase the height and the floors of the building? Basically, the question is that, is there any other option than high rise in urban areas?
Okay. See, I believe we must develop city. We must work on cities. And right now, I have a project inside Kolkata, and we have to work in combination. We have to, because you cannot build with mud. You need concrete or steel, maybe bamboo if we can develop it further. So you can use combination. So for the yes, I cannot hear very well. See, and then there was a question of high rise. It depends what you call high. No, if you say ground plus 4, ground plus 5, plus maybe ground plus 6, that's something. If you say ground plus 20, that's really something different. The high rise, like more than 10 stories, are inefficient in use of resources. And if you take Paris is an extremely dense city, and the buildings are just ground plus 5. And the most dense part of Kolkata, the buildings are just ground plus 4 or 5. And so density is certainly a good thing. Personally, I think density is a very good thing, but it has to be done very wisely. We see you to keep space for trees. Have a tea in the month of May in the afternoon. You will feel comfortable, which is impossible in other part of the city. So density is not at all a bad thing, and it's not at all incompatible with using non-toxic material and local skills and local material. We have to find a way to combine all this.
Yes.
I don't know.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, I guess that's not a easy question to answer, because that also touches many other domains. would probably be, I mean, to the person who has asked question, this question also could be taken in some of our future talks, because there are many other topics we're going to touch.
But may I just
Laura,
intervene here?
yes,
One
yes,
second. May I
yes,
just
yes,
intervene here? I do
yes,
believe that it is short-sighted of us to look at high-rise as the only solution to density. As Paris proves, as a lot of modern high-density, low-rise construction proves, density isn't necessarily increased by simply going high-rise.
Yes.
Though it's
yes,
advantageous to the developers who build that way, because prices increase, the cost of building increases, many other things, and therefore profits also increase. But in itself, density doesn't necessarily imply high rise. And
Yes.
when we are talking about mixed solutions, I mean, I have myself designed in Bangalore a 6-story building with concrete frame, otherwise in unfired brick walls. So there are all kinds of intermediate solutions that are possible.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
yes. Thank you, SP. Well, there's a interesting question. One of the thing is, of course, Laura, there are many appreciations. We are not able to go through many, but extremely inspiring and beautiful presentation. Please share Mr. Laurent's contact details for students to share their thoughts. There's one more. There are various categorization of architecture that make me, as a young practitioner, come across romantic architecture, then boutique architecture, commercial architecture, mainstream architecture, etc. Can't there be just one simple uh, called sensible architecture? Mostly the people who categorize this way believe that so-called romantic architecture can't be a solution to build so many cities and villages that India needs. This always leaves me in a dilemma. Yeah. So what's your message to the young architects who are confused by many of these
Okay. Yes. Yes.
boutique, mainstream,
See,
good-looking architecture
yes.
against that? Yes. Is there something called sensible
Yes.
architecture?
So, see, many architecture,
Yes, Laura. Yeah.
yes, so which I felt was almost as an insult. I mean, I am trying to be rational. I'm trying to be rational. And now how to characterize yourself is actually very difficult. You see, people to characterize not themselves, but what they are trying to do. So we say we are trying to be sustainable. But even sustainable is not a defensible concept. I mean, nothing deserves to last forever. You know, now people characterize what they want to do as appropriate, but then nobody else try to be inappropriate. So what are you specifically when you say appropriate? You are not saying much. Everybody wants to be appropriate. If you once upon a time I was saying I'm trying to do natural architecture, and then I found that natural architecture does not exist. When you start making a house, it's unnatural. Recently, Professor Sanjay Prakash had a very interesting observation. He said that buildings are made from nature, but they are not natural. So, see, basically, these are questions, you know, and I would say to this person, I would recommend to him or to her, you find your own way to characterize what you are trying to do. I am also trying, and I could not yet find a very satisfactory solution. So please work on that, I would say.
Yes. Thank you, Laura. Well, we are very close to running out of time. We are close to 6 o'clock. I would like SP to kind of wind up and
Thank you, Dharmesh. Let me
yes.
try and see if I can still share my webcam so that people can see my face. Yeah, okay. I seem to be able to do that. So I found that it was extremely inspiring, Laurent, what you spoke about, because essentially I see in the whole thread of what you are talking about a kind of unification of seemingly diverse principles. I mean, so many of the questions, urban versus rural, engineers versus architects, are divisive questions. In fact, you are talking about
Yes.
inclusivity here, and which is what I found extremely inspiring, because it's something that I have formally and informally believed in, and therefore it was great listening to
Yes.
you and looking at the work for that reason. So, I mean, I just want to thank you. I think you should be able to share your mail ID. Either speak it out now, or we will allow Dharmesh to put
Yes,
it
I
up.
can. Absolutely. I can put it on the chat, and Dharmesh, you can share it with anyone who wants it.
Okay,
Yes. Yeah.
great.
Absolutely.
That would
It
be
will be
great.
That will be.
So,
And I am very humbled by your. I didn't look at it this way, but I will try to do exactly what you told me.
no, I'm sorry that this has been slightly marred by a poor quality of audio and video, probably caused by uh, bandwidth issues at your end or at other ends. But thank you very much, and I hand it back to Dharmesh.
Well, thank you so much, Laurent.
Thank you.
We look forward to having you on our Gubbi Talks, where some of the other friends from Gubbi would be joining us. Every month, we are trying to do one or two, depending on how everybody is feeling and how everybody is getting time. For all the audience, just a small information that all these talks will be have been recorded and will be uploaded on the Gubbi channel on YouTube and the other channels by EDS Global. So you can access that. And I would like to thank SP for moderation, for Laurent to give us insight into his work and approaches, and of course EDS Global and Maitri Platform USA to give us this opportunity to use the platform. Thank you so much, and we look forward to having you with us in our next sessions of Gubbi Talks. Okay, bye-bye and good evening.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.